Testing 1, 2, 3. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm a little late. I was running around trying to get everything organized in my own mind anyway. Welcome. This is the City Council meeting for April 1st, not April Fool's Day. The first thing we have on our agenda this evening is our Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask Rhonda to lead us. And just for everybody's edification, John is away this evening and I'll be chairing the meeting. Next thing on our agenda is a presentation from the Whitefish Convention and Visitors Bureau. And here we go. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. All right, and Michelle, should I just like? Okay. Okay. Good evening, Council. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm Mariah Jose. I am the owner of Nelson Hardware and also the board chair for the Whitefish Convention and Visitors Bureau, also known as Explore Whitefish. I'm here today to present a very quick tourism update and to formally request Council's approval of our public budget for FY25. Our full FY25 plan was included in your board packets. I do have a couple of copies here if anybody wants to look at them in person. So state law requires this approval in order for Explore Whitefish to receive the annual funds from the lodging facility use tax, which is also known as the bed tax. Oh, we're going to move forward. Michelle had to leave for a second, so. Oh, thank you. Can you move that forward? And one more, please. Thank you. So first, I would like to acknowledge our current board of directors and staff and our partners. So besides myself, we have Jesse Farnes with Montana Coffee Traders, Rhonda Fitzgerald with the Garden Wall Inn, Matt Gibo with Whitefish Mountain Resort, Lauren Osolowski with Spotted Bear Spirits, Maggie Schwenker with Montana Coffee Traders, Erica Terrell with Glacier Restaurant Group, Edna White with April Hospitality, and Kimberly Wertman with the Big Mountain Commercial Association. I'd also like to recognize Julie Mullen, who's our executive director, Luke Walrath, who's our business manager, and Lillian Langston, who is our newly hired marketing manager. Finally, I'd like to recognize our creative partners and PR partners. So creative partner is DVA, creative agency out of Bend, Oregon, and Buckshot Enterprises for PR, which is Brian Schott, who's local. If we could move forward one slide. Okay. I know nothing about that. I don't know if you guys have ever seen me in my office. It's a little messy. It's the reason it's hidden. So our mission and value and mission statements, along with our guiding principles that you see here, really inform our decision making on a daily basis. These act as our bellwether in all of our efforts, including visitor education and community outreach. If at any time you have any questions about our FY25 plan or organization, our important role in the community, our mission, vision, goals, please reach out to either Julie or myself. We're happy to talk about it at length. So next, please. So for our tourism update, we felt it was really important to give a general overview of some recent trends in visitation. This data is provided by the ITRR, which is the Institute for Tourism and Recreation Research out of the University of Montana. Next, please. So first is a snapshot of visitation data. So in 2023, Whitefish saw an increase year over year in our day and drive-through visitors. That is on the yellow slide. On the green slide, what we see is while the day visitation was up, our Whitefish visitors who stayed at least one night have declined significantly since the height of COVID. We also experienced 12% less overnight guests in 2023 compared to 2022. I will be sharing more detailed reporting on the occupancy in upcoming slides. Okay, move. These are also the top visitor activities as provided by ITRR. These warm season activities continue to be top areas of interest to our visitors. For a complete breakdown of the activities, visitor characteristics, and where our visitors are choosing to sleep, please review the FY strategic plan. There's more information there. Okay, next. Traditional lodging. So these two slides here, you see these two graphs. One is for FY23, which for us runs from July through June. And then you see the current year to date for our FY since July of 23. So overall, our traditional lodging partners here in Whitefish underperform the rest of the the rest of the country. The American Hotel and Lodging Association reported that the average 2023 hotel occupancy in the US is 63.4%. Here in Whitefish, based on the FY23 data, we achieved a 60.2 occupancy rate. And currently year to date, we have averaged just under 55% occupancy. We are working hard to correct misperceptions within our community that our hotels are full. As you can see, we are truly experiencing significant shoulder seasons. We are a seasonal visitation market, and as our mission outlines, we are committed to enhance and preserve our year-round viability as a community. Please note, we have added all City Council members to our member market report, which details specifics on monthly lodging occupancy, average rate, demand, and supply availability. These reports focus on providing our members and the council with accurate, timely, and credible information. Short-term rental information. Once again, two graphs that show the same information. In FY 2023, short-term rentals add an estimated 2,830 nightly bedrooms into the 59937 zip code. This is based on the average listing having 2.5 bedrooms. At the height of our busiest season, we have seen over 1,600 listing units available. In FY24, we are seeing the same trend of declining occupancy in the short-term rentals. This data is sourced from AirDNA. In those, you can most markedly see that in the October, November, December, January of 23 and 24 on the graph up there, sorry. Explore Whitefish has a handful of short-term rental members, but overall, short-term rental owners are not members of our organization. Overall, the 1,100 plus short-term rentals in 59937 zip code do not help Explore Whitefish with the cost of management of visitor education, resources, or stewardship. We are working on how we can involve legally permitted short-term rentals in Whitefish and in 59937 to assist us in managing visitation more effectively and beneficially for the entire community. So moving forward into FY25, we identified 4 major strategic priorities. So for these, storytelling. As it relates to our local community, we need to build greater awareness that Explore Whitefish is working to balance the economic benefits of tourism while protecting our authenticity and effectively managing the disruptions associated with being a community that relies on a healthy visitor economy. For leading, Explore Whitefish is the main conduit and voice for the visitor industry and the visitor economy of our community. We take our role very seriously and not only work on behalf of our members, but on behalf of our residents. There's a delicate balance needed to effectively manage tourism, and we understand our strategic role in this industry. Advocacy. We need to build overall advocacy for the importance of destination management. COVID was a major disruptor, and our community continues to have what I consider a COVID hangover. But in reality, we need beneficial and responsible tourism to keep our community authentic and our businesses local. We cannot do this if there is such misperception about our role in the community. And finally, stewardship. Our board and the team of Explore Whitefish remain steadfast in our community to jointly preserve, protect, and strategically manage visitation to the benefit of our community and member partners. Okay, so the meat of what we're here for today. There remains a lot of misperception around how Explore Whitefish is funded. For bed tax collections, we receive less than 1% of the tax collected by the state. For FY24, we anticipate we'll collect $267,000 from the bed tax. Our private revenues, which we would not be able to do the breadth of what we do or manage tourism based on the bed tax revenues alone. 75% of our annual operating revenue is based on our private revenues from our member partners. And many of these member partners are not making their budgets so far this year, and based on declines in spending and lower than anticipated occupancy. Next slide. So our proposed FY 2025 public budget. You can see that this is broken down into three main categories: administrative costs, tourism management, and non-summer storytelling. The full outlines of our public and private budget are included in your packet for further review. So, to that end, thank you for your time. Any further questions can be directed to either myself or Julie, or if you have more, I'm happy to answer them now. And I ask now that council approves the FY 2025 public lodging facility use tax budget of $266,000.
Trying to be careful here. Thanks. And are there any specific questions from council at this time on the public portion of the budget? All right. Thanks so much. I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve the annual Whitefish Convention and Visitors Bureau marketing plan and budgeting for fiscal year 25 at $266,000.
Seconded by Councilor Norton. Any further discussion? I'll add a little. I want to thank you guys for what you've done and how hard you've had to work and the adversity that you've had to come through over this past year in particular. I think once the public begins to understand what you guys really do and how much the businesses in our community that we all want to support need you and need us to support you, I think that'll become more clear to you, and I hope that that comes clear real soon. And with that, I would like to, I'll take the vote on this. All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign, and it passes unanimously. Thanks so much, you guys. All right, carry on with your good work. Next item on our is another presentation, but this one is regarding the wage market study. It's going to be presented by Communications and Management Services, LLC. And away we go. That'd be great.
Well, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you, Jim.
Yep.
Sherry's going to provide a staff report real quick. We are having technical difficulties and we can't see you. And so
Okay.
as you walk through your report, if you could maybe, Michelle will have it up on the screen, maybe reference what page number you have.
Perfect.
You are the only attendee online, so we are safe there.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'll just wait after Sherry's done and then just holler and I'll jump in.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, great. In FY24 City of Whitefish budget, City Council approved funds to hire consultant CMS. And we did that, and they immediately began work on the wage market study and presented their findings at the March 18th City Council work session. Council requested CMS come back tonight and present their final report at the regular City Council meeting. Tonight, we're asking for you to approve and accept the FY24 wage market study report, which won't require a financial commitment at this point. The financial commitment will be completed through the FY25 budgetary process. So it is staff's recommendation the City Council accept and approve the Communication and Management Services, CMS, City of Whitefish FY24 Wage Market Study Report as submitted. And Jim's going to present, Jim Cairns from CMS is going to present his report.
Just a second, Sherry, and we'll go on. I just want to make a clarification. You're asking us to make a motion at some point this evening to not just accept, but approve.
The report.
Approve the contents of it. I'm just
Yes.
curious as what we're really asking for. Okay. Am I,
Yes, so you're just approving the report as complete by the consultants. Any actions that you intend to take after the fact with wages will be done during the budget process, but this is accepting that their work is acceptable to the council.
okay, great. Thank you. Just want to clarify that for council and everybody else. Okay. Carry on.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, so Michelle, if we could start out on page 3, and council members, you've probably seen most of this information. It was in our presentation that we looked at a couple weeks ago, but I'm just going to give you a quick walkthrough of the report. So our introduction pretty much summarizes Whitefish's overall standing. Actual incumbent wages are about 90% of the market, and we'll talk about step 5 a little bit further down the report. So we're at least 10% behind with our actual wages, and those differences really vary. We've got 14 of the study positions were below 90% of the market. Another 8 were between 90 and 95% of the market. So we're really going to want to, focus in, I guess, on maybe some strategies to be more competitive with pay. One thing I wanted to mention is that the city's been doing a good job managing pay, even though your wage matrix is a little bit behind. And I think a lot of that has to do with leadership hiring above entry many times, which has been the case recently. And also the steps and the wraparound have moved people through the wage ranges. So even though, step 5 may be behind the market, we've got good retention among the ranks. So a lot of folks are past step 5 and are in a better position with regard to the market. So just skipping ahead, Michelle, I'd like to look at page 5 and 6, if we could skip down there. Just wanted to give you a sense of the positions that were included in the study. So we had, you can see the survey titles. And what we tried to do there is we didn't survey every position in the city. We tried to get good occupational and hierarchical representation. So you'll see supervisors, good cross-occupational representation. We've got one director in there. So the intent was to give the city enough of a picture of the market that you could assess your workforce overall and make specific adjustments for positions if needed. Also wanted to let you know the report does specify at the top of page 5 and bottom of page 5, top of page 6, all of the jurisdictions that participated. And obviously the lion's share of the organizations are in Montana or in the Northwest. We did have a handful of other communities in California, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah that we included, but these weren't large communities. These were communities of a similar size and nature to Whitefish. So I would say the survey participants are appropriate, but represent a good picture of the market, but probably a conservative picture with regard to the fact that we did have some jurisdictions that typically pay a little bit lower included in there. So you'll see that we did include Butte, Silverbow, City of Great Falls. So I think the representation of jurisdictions that participated provide a good balance and a conservative balance, a good picture of what the market is. We also included in the report occupational employment wage statistics, which the city can use to kind of benchmark our data and see where the survey data we're providing kind of fits into some of the broader Montana, all industries, Western Montana, and nationally. So give you a good picture of where you kind of fit in there. Just want to skip down now, Michelle, if we can look at chart 1, which is on page 8. So what you'll see, chart 1, page 8, is we mapped out the average hourly market rate, and these jobs here are organized by the current city grade. So generally you can see that the city's ranking of positions generally reflects the market, but we have a few, that are a little low for where they're at. You can see the parking enforcement officer at a grade 14 pays maybe more like what a grade 12 position pays. And then we've got jobs that are, significantly higher, like the landscape foreman at a grade 16 is actually paying as much or more than some grade 8 positions. But generally, the city's ranking of positions reflects the market, and this chart and this data will really help the city determine, what type of individual classification adjustments might we need to look at, or global market adjustments we should look at. Chart 2 then gives you the pay ranges that we surveyed, so the high and low for the different titles. And this will give the city the opportunity to assess, are our entry rates really competitive? And then, our upper end of the pay range, I said that, the city steps and the wraparound, which is where people can wrap around once they've maxed out in one grade into the steps in the next grade, provides a good upper end and has helped the city remain competitive. But at some point, we'll have to figure out, how far above the market do we want to pay? In the city, Sherry's reported the city has had to hire above entry more frequently than lately. I think it was like eight people above entry the year before, about 9 this past year. So, that kind of tells us that our infrastructure is falling behind the market a little bit. And then we'll want to look at the top end as we get, limited dollars. How much do we want to pay, or what's the maximum rate for a position? The following page 9, this is the chart that the council saw during the work session. And this shows the Whitefish wage as a percent of market, which, as I said before, is about 90%. And then Whitefish step 5 as a percent of market is about 84%. So our wage infrastructure is, lagging significantly behind the market. We use step 5 as a benchmark against the market because basically that's about where an employee is going to be after about 4 years of employment if they start out at entry. So, for our objective or our compensation philosophy, people getting to market in about 4 or 5 years, I think is about right. But you can see there that we're a little bit behind the market at step 5. We're only about 85%. So the city will want to consider that when looking at some potential wage matrix adjustments. The next thing briefly I want to do is skip ahead to page 16. I want to show you, after some of the charts, we've got findings by position. So I was just going to pick a title and walk you through what the per position titles look like. Page 16 is our administrative specialist. So just to give the council an idea, the description you see at the top there describing the administrative specialist 1 and the education and experience, that's the description that was sent out to the survey respondents. The various other local government jurisdictions, the state and the private sector employers that participated reviewed that job description, then they told us what that same position in their organization pays. So what you'll see below there under the job description is the survey results. We have the mean, and it is a smaller sample size. You see, we had about 22 organizations, about 84 employees. So we consider that kind of a smaller sample size. So we really, with a small sample size, recommend taking a close look at the mean. But we also provided the weighted average, and you'll see the weighted average differs from the mean in that employers with more employees, their reported wages carried a heavier weight than employers with fewer employees. So basically, when you see the weighted average being a little bit lower than the mean, that's because there were, 1 or 2 employers in the mix that had a large number of administrative specialists, and their reported wages carried a little heavier weight, which brought the weighted average down a little bit. Then below that, you'll see the median, which is just the number in the middle of the data set. So we have 22 organizations reporting. The median would be right in between. So right in between 11 and 12, or 11 is the median. And then what we have there is the City of Whitefish actual wage. So that's if there's one incumbent in the position, that's that person's actual pay, or if there's multiple incumbents, it's the average pay of all those City of Whitefish employees. Then we show what we call the compa ratio, which is just simply the actual pay of the employees divided by the average or the mean market rate. You also see the high and the low, so you can use that data to assess your wage ranges, and then again, the number of organizations and number of employees. The table below there is actually going to show you each data point. So we, like I said, we had 22 organizations responding. You'll see 22 data points on the chart. The black dot is their actual average rate wage, and then you'll see the wage range they use around that. And some organizations don't have a wage range, they just have a single rate of pay. So in those cases, you'll just see a dot. Some people, they're incumbents at the top end of the wage range, so you'll see them at the top. We've got another one where the incumbent wage is at the bottom of the wage range, and that's probably somebody that's new. So you'll see they're following at the bottom. So you can kind of see where everything fits in. And then below that, you'll see the City of Whitefish average wage. That's the brown line. And below that is the step 5 rate. The red line is the market rate. So that chart will give you at a glance a good sense of the distribution, where the employees at different employers are at in their wage range, and then how the City of Whitefish compares. And like I mentioned earlier, we included occupational employment wage statistics from a couple different areas. So we looked nationally, local government, and you can see what the mean and the median is there. So, you know, our survey results are actually comparing pretty well to national results. We're a little bit higher than Montana, but if you look at the 75th percentile, we're right in there. And this job's actually a little stronger than a typical secretary or administrative assistant. So it doesn't surprise me that the reported wages would be more in line with the 25th percentile. So that gives you a sense of kind of where you stand in regard to the market and where the market results stand overall, in addition to broad market data. So before I move on, I just wanted to give the council, if anybody had any questions about the by position findings or overall findings from the market study before I get into some of the compensation trends.
Any questions from council at this point? Continue.
Great, thank you. So Michelle, I'd like to skip down to page 46 if we could. So a couple other pieces of information that the report includes is, as part of the survey, we did ask the other jurisdictions and participants to tell us what they're doing as far as pay adjustments. So we asked what they did in 2022 and 2023 and what they're planning on doing for 2024. So you'll see there on page 46, kind of the ranges, you know, and we did have people, obviously in 2022 and 2023, we saw some pretty big jumps in cost of living. You know, and a lot of jurisdictions and employers have been scrambling to keep up with the market. So you'll see, you know, all of those years ranges from 4 to 10%. It hasn't quite emerged what people are going to be doing for 2024 with regard to the market. But you can see there that a lot of jurisdictions have really been making some significant adjustments. And you'll see performance / merit. That could be either a performance-based pay system or the City of Whitefish's step system, where you move a step up each year with service. We also consider a merit system. So you can kind of see the ranges of what people are doing for cost of living, performance, market-based, hiring, retention. And then we also gave you below table 4 there some actual averages. So pretty broad ranges. We averaged the ranges to give you those percentages there. So like I said, you can see that some pretty big movement in wages in the marketplace, particularly among the folks that participated in this survey. You also see at the page at top of page 47, World at Work, which used to be the American Compensation Association, is an organization we keep tabs on, and they're reporting nationally non-exempt and exempt salaried wage increases of 4.5%. So that's really significant because I've been watching these reports for years, and prior to COVID, it was pegged at about 3% for many years. So, you know, 1.5% increase as far as nationwide salary budget survey, represents a pretty significant jump in what people are doing with wage increases. So I think that's pretty important to think about. A lot of jurisdictions are increasing wages. A lot of counties and cities are in the same boat as Whitefish as far as scrambling to catch up. And we've been working with a lot of other jurisdictions on doing salary surveys, classifications, market studies, to kind of respond to some of the unprecedented wage growth and inflation that we've been experiencing over the past few years. Just skipping down to the next page, page 48, we did include some regional wage growth data. So you can see that, wages are continuing to grow from where we're at 2019 to where we're at now. And there's plenty of peaks and valleys there, but you can see overall, particularly in the Northwest, where, we're still experiencing, we've seen about almost 127% wage growth since 2019. So like I said, that's really significant, and that's not something that local governments typically have to respond to, but is something you've been dealing with over the past few years there. We included some other economic indicators that we feel are very important to think about when you're setting pay. We included some living wage data. So you can see, in Flathead County, a living wage, and that's just the amount you have to make to pay rent, buy groceries, for a single adult with no children is $20.36 an hour. So that's really jumped up. And I know you all are aware of inflation and the costs going through the roof. There may be some positions at the city that pay lower than a living wage. But, generally for our full-time staff that are counting on, their wage to support themselves and their families, a living wage is something I'd recommend we at least be cognizant of or think about in going through that. Inflation continues to grow, but we are seeing it slow down a little bit. And, as City Manager Smith proposed, about a 3.6% COLA might help us keep up, but we need to look back and see we've been, really far behind, and some of the peaks in cost of living were pretty significant over the past few years. So that's really going to leave a lot of employers scrambling to keep up there. And then unemployment data is another thing we think about when we're setting wages. And unemployment has moved pretty low, top of page 50 there. You can see we're at about 4.9%, which is preliminary for right now. It's a little bit higher than we were last month, and higher than the previous year, but it's actually a little lower than the long-term average of 6.64%. So, when unemployment is low, that means there's not as many job seekers out there, and employers have to be a little bit more creative or pay a little bit more to attract folks when unemployment's low. Couple other good tidbits of information in there. We didn't survey benefits, but as part of some of the work we did with staff, and as you may recall during the work session, we mentioned that we had done a survey of staff and a focus group with staff. Great opportunity to educate staff about the market and what the city's doing, and got some great information from staff about what keeps them around, what's good recruitment retention, what some of their concerns are with regard to wages. So the staff had some good feedback on benefits, and I think that information will be very helpful to the city as you look at maybe benefit program redesign or update going forward. And certainly, you can see almost everybody highly values the health insurance, and that's going to provide Whitefish a competitive advantage. And I also think, as a public sector employer, your leave benefits are going to provide you a good advantage. But I really recommend that even public sector employers, not solely rely on some of those traditional benefits to keep people around. A lot of public sector employers have looked at, flexible work and some of these other types of non-monetary benefits to hang on to people. So that information should be very helpful. And then to wrap up, as far as recommendations, a couple of things we really recommend the city consider. is number one, maybe taking some time to articulate your compensation philosophy. And this, I think, would be a very useful exercise for the council to think about, and the compensation philosophy. And this is on page 51, 52, Michelle, is going to address things like where do we want to be in regard to the market? What do we want to pay for? Obviously, we have to consider the budget. We have to consider long-term implications of wage changes. We want to make sure our managers and employees understand the system. We want something that's going to be administratively efficient. And then, the council may want to think about things like, is performance pay important? Or do we want to really focus on longevity or time and grade as a key for pay? So defining a compensation philosophy will really help the council set policy and kind of what we want to do with regard to pay. I think it's a great tool to communicate to staff that, things like where we're focusing on a total rewards package. We're not just focusing on base pay. We want to focus on good benefits and, educating employees about those benefits and about that focus so they can truly understand the value of working for the city. We did include from the survey some compensable factors or things that were important to staff in setting pay. So we asked folks, what do you think are the most important things that the city consider when you're setting your pay? And as you can see on the chart on page 53, the most important, or the thing that staff thought was the most important, was the market rate and job content. And that's good because that's basically what the city is basing pay decisions on, is job content. We've got a job content based classification system, and we're also going to consider the market in terms of the overall wage matrix. But you will see individual performance was coming in third as what people thought was important. So that may be something the city wants to think about, as maybe as our workforce values change, do we want to, update our pay plan to be more contemporary, or are we ready to do performance pay, or is that a line of business we don't want to get into? So these are all the types of things that the council can set forth in defining its compensation philosophy. Another recommendation we have is that the city possibly consider updating or revising its job classification system to give your HR experts a little more flexibility to consider the market when assigning city positions to grades. The current classification system looks solely at job content, which is very important. It needs to be done. I mean, as a public employer, you have to ensure equal pay for equal work. You have to ensure that jobs that have similar responsibility pay the same. So job content and market are very important things, but performance may be something else you want to think about. And then our final recommendation is, and this is kind of illustrated on pages 54 and 55, is you do have, most of our positions have a step 5 that's significantly below the market, which would indicate a significant kind of matrix wide adjustment would be appropriate to get you more in line with the market. And city manager had proposed maybe a matrix adjustment of up to 5% last time. Maintaining the cost of living adjustments, maintaining your steps. And then even after you do all that, there may be a number of positions that are still below the market or still have a step 5 below the market. So, budget willing and budget allowing, you may want to actually look at a few positions to see if reclassification is warranted. And we recommend you look at not only the market, but look at job content, look at your recruitment and retention experience, and look at all those factors to identify those areas that may be a high priority for reclassification if we don't quite get everybody where we want them to be after adjusting the matrix, doing a COLA, doing step adjustments. So that's pretty much the report in its entirety. One other component of the report you'll see is a addendum A, and that starts on page 58, Michelle. And we wanted to get some additional titles studied and get contemporary market data on some additional titles So these jobs weren't necessarily included in the salary study, but we used existing salary survey data that we have, proprietary surveys, and uh, public wage databases to generate some market rates for these positions, just so your HR director and city manager would have a little bit better coverage of market rates for positions. So between the 31 positions that were included in the salary survey and the additional 15 titles included in the market study, we ended up with contemporary market data for about 46 titles, which will give us enough information not only to, address those titles, but also to benchmark other titles and decide if there's other occupations that weren't necessarily included in the market study or salary survey that we should be looking at as well. So that is kind of my tour of the report, and happy to stick around if anybody has any questions or comments or concerns with the data presented.
Sherry, Dana, would this be a time if council has any questions to ask them?
Yes.
Anybody have any questions? Steve?
Hi, this is Steve Quinnell. Just have a question about, if I heard you correctly, you did not take into, you just compared wages. You didn't take into consideration total compensation, including healthcare. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so is there any sense do you have any sense of whether or not the healthcare compensation with the city is on par, or is that 90%, or is that 110% of the average of these other communities that you studied?
We could benchmark that for you. We didn't actually collect data from the other communities on what they're paying for healthcare. I mean, generally the healthcare package is comparable, but when we talk about public sector employers, that's probably the biggest variable is healthcare as far as deductibles and those types of things. So we could provide some data in comparison to national average, but we did not collect data from other jurisdictions on their healthcare provisions. So we can't really give you good data on how your healthcare compares to other jurisdictions.
But you could compare it to national data.
Yes, we could.
Okay. This is coming from a public sector employee whose healthcare doesn't even come close to matching up to the healthcare provided by the city here. So I'm just wondering where that fits in with when we talk about total compensation versus just looking at wages.
Right.
The other question I had, if you go to page 46, on table 4, you have the average actual and planned pay adjustments. If I'm reading that correctly, N equals 5 and N equals 6, those are just, so out of those 22 different communities you compared to get the data that in there, you only looked at 6 of those and 5 of those and 4 and then 2 in some places, is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And not all jurisdictions were doing adjustments, so some didn't. And just to be totally clear, some simply didn't report. It doesn't mean they're not doing it. But some people didn't fill out the survey in that regard, or some people didn't do that type of adjustment that year. So the N is the actual number of respondents. So like the cost of living, the 4.94% would represent the average of 5 employers that are providing a cost of living adjustment in 2022.
Okay, but you did survey over 20, or you surveyed 22 other, was it total 22 different places that you surveyed? Or was it more than that?
Yes.
Okay, but only 5 had
Yeah.
data, only 5 of them had data where they reported what their cost of living adjustment would be for 2022.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yes, and let me circle back and clarify, there were actually 36 organizations that participated in the salary survey, but not all of those organizations responded to those questions or provided that data.
Thank you.
Ben?
Excuse me. Just one question. How common is it to see performance-based pay on a municipality such as ours?
Fairly uncommon. Not a lot of organizations in the public sector are doing performance-based pay. We do have a couple municipalities that are piloting it and working on it. And a lot of jurisdictions like city and county governments are, letting departments go towards that as they're ready. But there's been a big reluctance for a lot of jurisdictions to do it enterprise-wide, just because not all departments are ready or have a valid or reliable performance appraisal system. Probably the biggest trend we've seen is, systems that have step systems like the city of Whitefish are looking at putting in place maybe opportunities for, advancing somebody maybe 2 steps in a year if they have superior performance. But performance pay is pretty new in the public sector, and while some jurisdictions in Montana are looking at it, there's not a lot that are doing it full blown. In fact, most of the ones I can think of that are doing it full blown are smaller, administratively attached organizations. For example, like our Helena Housing Authority, which is administratively attached to our city, is doing a pure performance pay system, but they've got a pretty small workforce. They've got less than 50 people, so it's pretty manageable, and it gets a little unwieldy with larger jurisdictions.
Do you think that the wage structure that we have set up here is common and appropriate for this municipality?
The step system is common. I think it's appropriate in that it provides, certainly provides the ability to budget, because you know what the steps are, and it certainly provides some predictability for employees. The one thing I would say about it is, the city would really need to understand which step, and we've got, I think, and Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've got about 14 steps. So which of those steps should represent market? And like I said, for this purpose, we benchmarked against step 5. So then that begs the question, if step 5 is market, how far past market do we want to go? So, the number of steps you have, particularly with the wraparound, is a lot of steps, and a lot of jurisdictions maybe are going to have fewer steps and really have more market-based pay. But generally a step system, we've seen quite a bit in government just because people like the predictability. One of the downsides of the step system is you are, to a certain degree, guaranteeing a certain hourly rate with a certain number of years of service. So you got to come up with that from a budget standpoint. So, as long as you have a history of having the budget to support the steps, I think it's appropriate. We've had some smaller jurisdictions have to move away from steps just because they can't commit, or if they had to pay everybody, at 23 bucks an hour, they might have to lay somebody off to get there. So they've gone to more of a target market ratio system than a step system for that reason. But generally, in lieu of budget limitations or other factors, I think the system you have is appropriate for the city.
Rebecca.
So if we get this done this year, where we try to get everybody up to maybe 90%, because I'm looking at what you gave us, like the accountant is 74%, librarian 73, but then we have construction inspector 108%. So if we try to bring everybody up 5, and then also target the ones that are very low, after that, then will our human resources personnel update these regularly, or do you come back in as a consultant to do this more often?
Jim, I can take that question for you if you'd like.
Sure.
Our intent, Rebecca, is that the 5% will bring that step 5 up to 100% market for any position. That's why we're only going 5%. The building inspector that you mentioned, that's their actual wages versus where the step 5 sits. After that, we would either internally be looking at all of the positions, and we would be doing individual classifications, with job content and market rate taken into account. But I have asked Jim for a cost proposal and what it would be having him assist us with either a new job classification process, looking at the matrix as well. So that will be a stay tuned on what we do next. budgetarily, we will look, and we're just working on the budgets now. The 8.5%, which would be the 3.5% cap of COLA plus the step that we currently use as a formula, plus a 5% mark rate is what's intended for the preliminary budget. And then if we have funding available, we might be able to throw in some lump sums to get those lower compared to market positions up a little bit. But it will take time to go through that classification process. So the easiest way for this July 1, since we are only 3 months away, will be to do this first total 8.5% increase, but 5% of that being market. So we can talk about that more, but staff might be coming forward with a proposal to hire the consultant to help us with the next step as well.
Giuseppe, any questions? Andy? Any questions? I want to point something out, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that this takes into account a step process within a particular job classification. One of the things that I think Whitefish should be, and I don't see it being taken account for here, is our ability to move people not just through steps, but through elevated positions through our process. And there's a huge benefit to that to people that come to work for the city of Whitefish, knowing that our goal generally is to promote from within. And I think that's a benefit that, you know, it's hard to sell, but I give us some measure of break, if you want to call it that, by bringing people up in position and therefore up in pay, and not relying solely on a step system to get them where they want to go. But I say that as a comment, and something that on a personal level I'm really quite proud of based on my experience with the city, that we've been able to do. And I think that's a really good thing. Not a lot of communities and organizations can say that they can do that and demonstrate that they do that. So that's just a comment.
Do you want me to comment on that?
Yeah, I do.
I would say there's a lot of us here at this table that have gone through being promoted internally. So we do have a great system there. And also, we are working towards classifying our lower level positions at a stepped or a career ladder type of position, like our administrative assistant type position, having a step 1, step 2, which puts them in a different range on the wage matrix. So they have upward mobility within their own position, and that also helps retain those positions or retain those people in those positions. So you're not losing that historical knowledge that and time that you've spent developing those individuals.
And I think it also demonstrates our
Commitment
and value of them as people as well. And I think that's real important to take into consideration here as well.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Rebecca? Oh, yeah, I think we're ready.
I'd like to make a motion to accept and approve the CMS City of Whitefish Fiscal Year 24 Wage Market and Study Report as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Fury. Any discussion?
I would like to make a friendly amendment. I would like to see at least some data on the total compensation package that we offer here, because I do believe that our healthcare, I think we need to compare it at least to national averages with the kind of healthcare we offer here at the city, because the total, I mean, we're just looking at wages, and that's important to look at. We also need to look at the total compensation, especially if we're talking about looking at an 8.5% increase for all employees for the next year, which is going to come at a hefty cost to our taxpayers. I think it's important that we at least have some understanding of the total compensation that we offer. So that's I would like to offer that friendly amendment. I don't know how hard that is to get that information added into this report at this time, but I think it's important that we can see that.
One, if I might. Sherry, what's your response to that?
I can do a survey here in the state of Montana with our HR professionals that we have we survey each other all the time and get comparables in that manner, if that would be acceptable. Nationally, it's a little bit tougher, and comparing public sector versus private sector, is that what you're asking for? Or are you just asking for public sector?
No, I heard that. When I asked the question, I'm sorry, I forgot the gentleman's name who's on the line.
Jim.
Jim, when I asked Jim, he said that he could get the national data for public sector compensation for health insurance. And I would just like to see that. I think it's important that we have a picture of that.
I'm
And
fine with that. It would just, I think we would have to amend the existing consultant contract to get that data.
Okay, is that what, would we have to amend Jim, would we have to amend what we have with you to do that?
let us take a look at our budget, because we did save some money. I didn't come there for the meeting in person tonight, so we may have a little bit of money we can scrape up. And I think, Sherry, maybe you and I can talk offline after the meeting, because I can probably pull some Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and we could maybe supplement that with quick internal state survey if you could do that. And we could maybe just prepare an addendum to the report.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to you under the circumstances?
That's acceptable to me. It was a side motion. It was a friendly amendment to Rebecca's motion, so I guess it would have to be approved. It would have to be seconded and voted on.
Sorry, Jake. Include an addendum on health insurance benefits.
Yes, that's my friendly amendment.
Okay.
All right, procedurally, I'll go with, I need a second for his friendly amendment.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor, okay. Now I think we'll take a vote on the friendly amendment, and then we can get to your motion. Is that acceptable?
Just a quick comment on that before we vote on it. I mean, it's a relatively simple thing to do, I think, Sherry, because everybody gets the same package for healthcare, so it's not something specific by position that we have to go through all the positions in the city and calculate that out. And some people obviously don't get, temporary employees don't get healthcare, but it should be relatively easy to do, and so.
All those in favor? Passes unanimously, and now to the original motion. All those in favor? Passes unanimously, and I think we're good. Thanks so much. All right. Next on our agenda this evening, we have communications from the public. So let's open up to the public. Seems like a long time to get to this, I gotta say. So,
Wow, you guys really know how to hold a show tonight. Katie Williams, 427 West 2nd Street, Whitefish. I am here on behalf of Housing Whitefish. As the board chair, our lovely ED, Daniel Sitter, is currently flying home, so we could not make it. In your board packet, you have an item from the city manager, which is a development agreement between Housing Whitefish and the city of Whitefish. I'm here to answer any questions when the time comes, if you have any questions. And I would just like to say we're very excited to be here just in this moment and be asking for $1 million to develop Alpenglow 2 so quickly. We're very excited. We're also very excited with all of the partnership opportunities we've had with Explore Whitefish. Their contributions have allowed us to grow very quickly and effectively. We just issued our first set of checks for the rental assistance, Whitefish Workforce Rental Assistance Program, so Daniel will report on that. Other than that, if you guys have questions, please let me know, and thank you for all you do.
thanks, Katie. Any other public comment this evening? Michelle, any public comment online?
No. Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda is communications from volunteer boards. Any volunteer boards in the audience that wish to make a report? Council, any volunteer board reports? Steve?
We had a meeting with the Community Development Board last week before last, not last Thursday, but the Thursday before that. We got an update on the growth policy, where we are with that. There's some interesting, some of the artwork is out in the hallway if you want to check that out. Those are going to be included in the new update to the growth policy. That's artwork from students here in Whitefish. And I would also encourage you, before our next meeting, to read carefully through the notes from that meeting. It was a bit of a confusing meeting. for some, I think, and I think that there's some really vital information about the discussion we had that, that before we get to that next meeting, before we get to our next meeting, that you read through those, read through the minutes carefully from that meeting, please. Thank you.
Steve, any other volunteer board type reports from council? Not seeing on any. We move now on to our consent agenda. And Ben,
I would move to move item 6B off of the consent agenda for further discussion.
so moved. And when would you like us to discuss that? As soon as we approve the remainder of the
That
consent
would
agenda?
make sense to me. Yep.
With that removed, do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I so move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Rebecca? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Oh, no, oh, yes. Would you like
Can we
discussion?
have some further discussion?
Sure,
Please, thank
sure,
you.
sure.
Just very quickly, since they're embedded in the consent agenda, I wanted to congratulate Officer Ben Weirman and firefighter Robert Sharp for their confirmation tonight. Congratulations and good job.
Thank you, Giuseppe. All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously, Michelle. And now on to the item that was removed from the consent agenda, which would be our resolution 24-16. Ben.
Sure, I'll be brief. I found myself still being a little confused about our procedurally how we're dealing with these annexations. I do know from reading the newspaper that there is a development application pending for this parcel that does involve zone changes and other things. And I thought it might be helpful if you could clarify for council and for the public what we are approving this evening and what we are not approving this evening, and why this item would be on the consent agenda. Thank you.
So traditionally, we've put petitions to annex on the consent agenda. When we redid some of our zoning laws, we did the kind of subsequent that we're allowed to do under Montana law, where we annex and consider the zone change at one hearing. This one didn't really qualify for that procedure because it has to meet certain criteria. So what you're deciding tonight is simply whether to annex. That is it.
Fair enough. So annex only, nothing, everything else will be coming at a later date.
Everything else will be coming in a later date. Your decision right now is just whether to bring the property within city limits.
Rebecca? Go.
Angie, what was it that was different, that we wouldn't be doing everything at once with this project?
So we can only consider annexations and zones if the proposed zoning authorizes land uses comparable to the land uses authorized by the county zoning. Their proposed zoning is somewhat similar to the county zoning, but there's also zoning out there that's heavy industrial, county zoning. So it didn't really qualify for that. And if we can do it if they're consistent, the zoning's consistent with the requirements recommended in the growth policy. And that is actually not true as well. So the way we used to do annexations is they come in, they'd annex, and then either we would initiate the zone change, or if they wanted something different, they would initiate, so.
Okay, so we'll have the opportunity to look at the whole proposal.
Yes, you will have the opportunity to look at the whole proposal, but right now, they're just asking to be within city limits.
Thank you.
And I just want to clarify one thing for everybody in the audience and watching online. If we vote to annex this property, we give no assurances of any level of development on that property other than what is authorized under an equivalent county zoning. We are not authorizing, we are not sending a message that we're accepting the proposal that was at the planning board last meeting and was rejected by the planning board last meeting. Just clarifying that for everybody here and for everybody in the audience. This is no assurance that we will accept or allow that kind of development on the property. Are we clear? Yes, ma'am.
Could you guys clarify what we are going to in terms of zoning then? Like, just so the public's included in this too?
Again, you're just considering annexation, Rebecca. They have a proposal to change the zoning on it, but you guys are not considering that right now.
I'm confused, because if we annex, don't we have to go with what county zoning, the closest we can get to county zoning?
It has been our tradition to go as close as we can to county zoning.
But we don't have to.
No.
Okay.
We try not to downzone people.
But when we annex this parcel, if we go forward tonight, what will they be able to do by right?
Again, you're just considering whether or not to annex them. I don't think it's appropriate to get into the details of what they're proposing. So if we annex them, either you guys will accept the zoning that they're requesting, or we will go forward as a city to zone them, which we've done in the past. And again, our policy has not been to not downzone people from county zoning, because you can run into some legal troubles there. But there's no guarantee that what you folks are going to do for their zoning is going to be relate to the county zoning. But again, I mean, what's before you right now is just to bring it into city limits. You guys will see all the rest coming up.
You can watch the video and you'll know what their proposed zoning is, but that's not what we're considering right now.
Go ahead, Ben.
Since I started the discussion, would you like me to
I would like you to
move
make
it to a
motion.
resolution?
Yeah.
I would move that we adopt resolution 2416 to annex the parcel as specified.
I'll second.
Motion is moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Talk about it later.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Rebecca Norton is in opposition to the annexation. What? I'm identifying what we're going on here. That said, moving on to our next item, we have one public hearing this evening. This is a consideration of a request from Lake Park Lane LLC for a preliminary plat for 9-lot subdivision located at 270 Lake Park Lane, Zone WR2. And here we are. Thanks.
Good evening. Yep. So the applicant is proposing a 9-lot subdivision. It's on 2.325 acres. It'll be accessed off a private road that would connect Salmon Run up through Lake Park Lane, both public rights of way. The lots are 77,301 square feet or greater, meeting the zoning with a density of 3.87 dwelling units per acre for single-family homes, and 7.73 units per acre for the proposed duplex use. It's zone WR2. There are residential land uses surrounding. There's some county R4 zoning to the north and south, but to the east and west is also City of Whitefish WR2. Notice was mailed to adjacent landowners. A sign was posted on the property, and the notice published in the Whitefish Pilot. I received 3 public comments at the time of the report, and I added one more comment I received after. I put that on your desk. The comments, they had concerns with utilities, parking, parkland, and drainage. So to review the findings of fact, effects on health and safety. So fire, the fire marshal has reviewed the project for conformance with the city's adopted fire codes. While the whole city is in the wildland urban interface, the property is not heavily wooded. As far as flooding, it's not in a map floodplain. There is access, and there will be access through the proposed private road. Traffic impact study is not required, as it will generate less than 200 trips per day. So the proposed subdivision will not have a negative effect on public health and safety. As the fire department has reviewed the proposal, there's no environmentally insensitive areas. Access will be from the new private street. The subdivision should not have a negative effect on wildlife, as there are no map crucial wildlife corridors. Again, it's likely that animals will use the open field, and staff notified Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and received no comments. The subdivision should not have a negative impact on the natural environment, as there's no mapped stormwater conveyances, wetlands, or areas of potentially high groundwater on the property. And stormwater will be reviewed and approved by Public Works prior to final plat. It will have access to city water and sewer. The applicant is proposing to extend that private road from Salmon Run through to Lake Park Lane, and they will need to dedicate 10 feet on the north by Lake Park Lane and 20 feet for Salmon Run. The street trees will be installed on Salmon Run, and then final engineering plans for the new public street will be reviewed and approved by Public Works prior to the construction. Parks and open spaces, so the subdivision is required to provide parkland. The residential lots are less than half an acre in size, so that calculation is 11% of the net acreage. The net acreage this is 1.55 acres for a total parkland amount of 7,447 square feet. And this is less than the amount of minimum of 10,000 square feet that is required. Therefore, the applicant must pay a fee in lieu of parkland, and that will be determined at time of final plat, what that fee is. Police, fire, waste, medical services are anticipated to be affected. So the proposed subdivision does not pose any negative effects on local services, because city staff has preliminary reviewed the project for water, sewer, and stormwater systems. The parkland dedication would meet the requirements of state and city regulations for parkland requirements, and then the fire department again has preliminary reviewed the proposal for conformance with the fire code. The new public right-of-way, private road, the new public right-of-way will be installed on the eastern edge with Salmon Run being built. There are no proposed negative effects on agriculture. None of the properties surrounding the property, subject property, are being used for agriculture currently. Compliance with the growth policy. So this the growth policy identifies the land as urban residential on the future land use map, which includes the WLR, WR1, WR2, this was zoned into WR2. The growth policy from 2007, it meets a few of the future land use goals and transportation elements, as far as preserving the special character, scale, and qualities of existing neighborhoods while supporting, encouraging active, well-designed neighborhoods compatible in infill development, giving priority to infill development, without redesignating land to urban or suburban. So the project complies with the 2007 growth policy because the uses and development standards do comply. The project supports multiple goals and policies outlined in the growth policy. As far as the compliance with zoning, it's zone WR2. The minimum lot size and width are all met for the lots. Setback, setback, lot coverage will be determined. That'd be the time at building permit. Otherwise, it meets all of our zoning at this stage. Compliance with the Whitefish subdivision regulations. It's in city limits. It is included within the growth policy. It conforms to all zoning and design standards. The plan includes proposals for the extension of public infrastructure. Therefore, the project is eligible for an expedited review, which is what this is. So with the imposition of conditions, the subdivision complies with the subdivision regulations. And the proposed subdivision also complies with the Montana Subdivision and Platting Act. So it's recommended that the Whitefish City Council adopt the findings of fact within staff report WPP 23-04 and approve the Salmon Run subdivision as submitted by the applicant, subject to the following 17 conditions. General conditions, include the typical, must comply with Title 12 and Title 11, the zoning and subdivision regulations, and all the applicable recommendations, requirements of the city code, except as amended. There is a cash in lieu of parkland dedication for 0.171 acres of the value of the land at the time of final plat shall be paid at the time of final plat. Installation of street trees will be required on the western side of Salmon Run, and the landscaping plan approval is required at the time of final plat as well. A 10-foot right-of-way along the northern property along Lake Park Lane shall be dedicated to the city at the time of final plat, and a 20-foot right-of-way along the eastern property line for the extension of Salmon Run shall be dedicated to the city at the time of final plat. All roads within the subdivision shall be built to, City Whitefish Public Works standards. And again, the Salmon Run preliminary plat is approved for 3 years from council action.
Any questions from council on the staff report? Rebecca?
We got comments about tree retention. Could you address that? And I'm assuming the old car will be removed, but could you just address the tree retention for the neighbors?
So one of the, I guess there is a condition that, where did I put that? One of the, it's condition 16. It's a homeowner designing their home to protect identified healthy trees as much as practicable. Such saved trees must be identified on site plans for building permits and maintain tree protective fencing during construction. And then the applicant has proposed trees, a few trees to retain, but it's not a heavily wooded lot.
Any other questions from council on staff report? We advertise this for a public hearing. I think we should hold it now. Any member of the public wishes to speak on this matter, please.
Dear City Council, I appreciate you taking the time to hear our comments this evening.
Excuse me. Would you please provide name and address for us as part of the record? Thank you.
Nathan and Melissa Bassford, 235 Lake Park Lane, Whitefish, Montana.
Thank you.
I just wanted to provide these public comments. We are looking forward to new neighbors, and we embrace expansion of the opportunity to have more housing in Whitefish, but we also want to consider that the development happens in a modern way as well as embraces Whitefish's green outdoor values. In regards to the 270 Lake Park Lane, we have two specific concerns. The first is the need for basically open space in our neighborhood. The Whitefish City Council, as mentioned in the plan, the growth policy requires in Code 12-4-11 that parks or open space be created for each major subdivision. 270 Lake Park Lane is considered a major subdivision, being over 5 lots. And as the handout I have given you shows, Whitefish designated city parks currently are not in reasonable walking distance of families in our neighborhood on the west side of the city. As neighbors understand, as we understand, that to dedicate a park is different than dedicating open space. And we understand that the city has limited funds. And so it may not be feasible to dedicate a park space. However, as 12.4-11 states, it is talking about park and open space. And so we are asking, as the fields disappear year by year in our side of the city and subdivisions keep on being appeared, we ask that the dedication of park space doesn't occur, but open space, where my kids and other kids can play outside of the streets, which is a common occurrence in our neighborhood. We need publicly shared space in our neighborhood off the streets. Also, Whitefish clearly indicates in all of its documents that it is a green, forward-thinking community. So we need to think about these spaces not just as a place of open space, but as a place that we could be a more carbon-neutral community. And so that is the intent when you look at the subdivision regulations 12.4-11 that is stated, the intent is for open space. And so there is a stipulation, as mentioned, that you can pay cash in lieu of park space. And I believe this is a very short-sighted view, especially in reflection of the limited city park space on our side of the city. The developer bought this property less than 5 years ago for approximately $550,000. Having a subdivision dedicate 0.171 open space, which would reduce the lot subdivision to 8, is still very profitable for any developer at a current approximate lot value of $300,000 per lot. I just beg you guys, please do not make this fatal error of not designating open space. The second one is our concern with outdated infrastructure on Lake Park Lane. The Ice House Road subdivision, the city was very forethought and updated most of the infrastructure. Our concern is in particularly with the old power poles and an old fire hydrant. In our neighborhood, if you drive the streets west of Lake Park, west of State Park, which is kind of the divider for our neighborhood, you'll find that we are the only neighborhood that has these old features in our neighborhood. So I would ask you to really consider this, as well as the Flathead Electric has been on our street twice to fix those power poles since we've lived there. Thank you so much for taking the time to consider these comments, and I really ask that you consider that we change these in the subdivision stipulations. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Next.
Good evening. I'm Neil Lovering, 725 Ice House Road. My property is involved in the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association, which directly abuts the western boundary of the proposed or the recently annexed program. After having gone over the entire package that council got a look at from the planning department, I'm generally in favor of what I see, but it just brought some questions of mine that I'd like to be able to ask the developer if possible. First of all, the information we received from city was kind of blurred when it showed the actual lot sizes. What actually are the 9 lot sizes there? About 62 by 123. Okay, roughly city lot, roughly 60 by 120. Okay, my second, I recently learned in the paper that you're proposing duplex building on each lot. Will each lot have 2 dwelling places? How would
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. This is the time to address the council.
Right.
We can take those questions. Right now, we're answering without the virtue of people being able to hear Nelson on the mic. So if we're going to do this back and forth, then we need to get him a mic or something.
I think that's a fair point, Steve. Let's do it this way. Ask your questions, and then we'll bring staff up to see if they can answer them for you. Is that a good thing?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, good.
So you want me to give you the questions right now?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got the lot sizes figured out. I was interested in a duplex layout on those lots. So is it conceivable that they could have a minimum of only 1 dwelling unit or a maximum of 2 dwelling units on each of those 60 by 120-foot lots.
Okay.
Okay. Second, just for a point of information, is the builder doing, obviously going to develop all the infrastructure, but will the lots be sold individually, or will the developer plan to build out the whole concept?
Okay.
I see that there are covenants which restrict the situation here, basically because there is a street that is under the HOA purview, and also it looks like you're going to have a drainage facility that qualifies this for HOA. And whether anybody wants to know or not, I'm just interested in what they think the price range of the homes will be in this facility. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The ones, let's deal with these right now, and then I'll take your comments. The ones I think we can talk about here, Nelson, are the layouts on the lots. As I understand it from the zoning, the developer can put either a single-family home or a duplex on each of these lots.
That is correct. It's Zone WR2. It meets the minimum lot sizes, so they have the option of doing a single-family home or a duplex on each lot.
Okay. And just for your information, even if they put a single-family home on there, there's no, matter of fact, there's an incentive, and some might say, to put an accessory dwelling unit on there so that you would also have, you would essentially have the same thing as a duplex. You'd have 2 dwelling units on one lot, which is not inconsistent with anything that's around you. And then I picked, kind of half-picked this up. Is it true to say that the person that is platting this and it's asked for this approval of this development is actually just simply going to lay out and expect builders to come in or individuals to come in and say, I'd like that lot, and they're going to bring their own builder in? Or is there a plan that you know of right now?
That was not indicated on the application. Yeah, this is just simply for the subdivision, so anything, they are free to do it however they want, so yeah, I'm not aware.
Okay, great, thanks so much. I think that's all we can answer as a practical matter. Further comment?
How you doing? My name is Lindsay McDonald, and I live at 240 Lake Park Lane. We have approximately, we have 5 lots on in Patton subdivision, and those lots front Salmon Run. So our lots are 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. So, a little back history. Patton Lane was annexed by the city in 1947. And Salmon Run was also annexed in as well. There was a name change, 2018, somewhere on there. It was something else and changed into Salmon Run. I can't remember what it is. So Salmon Run, for those that you don't know, half of it's finished, half of it's paved, half of it's dirt. For whatever reason, I don't know. So my question is, and my difficulty in understanding is, there is a new subdivision going in, but there is no utilities going in on Salmon Run, completing it. So those utilities that are on Salmon Run now are only on the paved, not on the dirt. So my question is, why aren't those utilities being extended all the way down? So Salmon Run runs from Haugen Heights to Lake Park Lane. So I guess that's one question of mine. And it's a city seat. It's a city street from 1947. So I don't quite understand why this development isn't being required to tie in the remaining utilities. and they're using public utilities for their internal road, which is going to be private. So it's kind of, I'm having a hard time understanding that process. Also in the report, I'll try to be brief, the new subdivisions road shall be built to city standards. That's just a brief description of the report, where it says streets. But on Salmon Run portion of the streets, it says the applicant will be required to install street trees on the west side of Salmon Run. The final engineering plans for the new public street will be reviewed and approved by the Public Works Department prior to any construction. So my question is, why is the subdivision being required to build to city standards where Salmon Run says that it'll be determined in the future, according to Public Works? So that's what I get out of that report. So, and then as far as the lots on Salmon Run, there's approximately, I want to say 6, 7 lots that are still on the dirt. There's probably an additional 3 vacant lots, so there's probably around 7 vacant lots on Salmon Run that have not been built on. There's another section. In my letter, you'll see it. There's approximately, I think I calculated about 126 lots available in the Salmon Run area within a block of this development. So Patton Lane, which comes off of Haugen Heights, does not have a sidewalk. Lake Park Lane does not have a sidewalk. And there's a lot of foot traffic on that street, on Lake Park Lane. So with this new development, there's going to be a lot of more traffic, driving traffic, but there's no sidewalks. Or, you know, for a large part of our corner of the world. I agree with Nathan that there is no parkland around. So there's something that would have to be addressed there, I think, in the near future. The Salmon Run, not Salmon Run, but Lake Park Lane is a very narrow road. I think we measured it 240 inches wide. The average car is 130, so that leaves you 106 inches with a car parked on it for any kind of emergencies. So when you're with this new development, there's going to be off-street parking, and it's going to go on to Lake Park Lane most likely. So the question is, how are emergency vehicles going to make it through there, especially in the winter, because it gets tight. Salmon Run gets tight as well, even though on the paved portion it says no parking on this side, parking on this side. But, you know, it's summertime, everybody's loading up their boats and their gear, and makes it pretty tight. You know, you can't even drive through there if there's 2 cars on each side. Same will go for Lake Park Lane. So please take that into consideration. And the primary for me is the utility question. I don't get it. The walkability it will not exist with this new development, and then the future development of 271 Lake Park Lane, I guess, is in the works. That's the word on the street. That's 26 lots, WR2. So we have no sidewalks there to accommodate all that activity. My 5 lots, the Hill Brothers have an additional 6 lots, all within a block of this development. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you for your comments.
All right, thank you.
Nelson, you have anything you want to say about that? Yeah, one more. Yep.
Aaron Meeks, 240 Lake Park Lane, and I wanted just to confirm that I heard that there will be no.
Mike, you need to use.
Oh, sorry, about, there was no plan to look at the emergency services and if they can get in and out of our road. Was that correct?
What I heard was that the police department and fire department both signed off on this as access being adequate.
Okay. Is there a way to have that re-evaluated? Because I've, first responder myself, worked at Kalispell Regional for many, many years in an emergency capacity. And living where we live, in the winter, we have been blocked, either with snow removal, we can't get down Salmon Run, you can't get down, it's one lane down Ice House, and then we have no artery in this little area that they're proposing. So there's no easy in and out, especially in the winter. And so I would request that we can have that looked at. Like Lindsay and Nathan said, the road is very narrow. We can't pass cars. It's like a one-way. And then when you try to get out on Salmon, it's parking on one side only, but the neighbors always park on the one side, so you can't get through. So it really, to me, is an emergency hazard to put that many more duplexes in that small area without looking as a site visit in and out to do that, because we're in an island, but we're not. It does need some help. So that would be my comments.
Thank you so much. Any other public comment? Nelson, can you address some of those comments?
Yes. So I should have made this a little bit more clear, but the 10-foot dedication on the north side of the property on Lake Park Lane, there is going to be a sidewalk installed. And as far as the utilities not going along Salmon Run, Angie, it's been a couple years since I took land use law and planning school, but I don't think we can legally require them to install utilities there if it's not serving their purposes.
You are absolutely correct.
Okay. And Nelson, again, let's, given the description of the neighborhood over there and the streets, and I look at the railway district as being an equivalent, probably much worse. But how did police and fire evaluate the passability and the conditions and that kind of thing for this kind of a development?
Well, they essentially just approve, to make sure they're meeting the fire code, as far as, the hydrants and all that. Everything else is kind of built to the city street standards that are meant to be able to provide that sort of service.
So so we're comfortable with city standards, which is what we're going to hold them to. The concern I think expressed was the associated roads that come to that are not to that standard. Is that what I'm understanding?
I'm not quite sure exactly what that concern was, but because Salmon Run will be, constructed out, so that will be
To a city standard. Okay. All right.
If I'd interject real quick, because I just made a quick note of that when Lindsay was asking that question. He asked about street trees, and then he said, well, but then the road would be approved in a future point. Why would that be that way? And I will just read you very quickly condition number 3 of approval. And that's prior to any pre-construction meeting, construction, excavation, grading, or other terrain disturbance, plans for all on and off-site infrastructure must be submitted to and approved by the Public Works Department. The improvements within the development must be designed and constructed by licensed engineers in accordance with the City of Whitefish's design and construction standards. The Public Works Director must approve the design prior to any construction. Plans for grading, drainage, utilities, streets, street lights, street trees, sidewalks, and other improvements must be submitted as a package and reviewed concurrently. No individual improvement designs will be accepted by Public Works Directors. So that addresses your concern, I think, Lindsay.
Thank you. Point, one moment, please. Steve?
Nelson, I think you can probably answer this one. Will there be access to Salmon Run from these lots, or the access is only on the internal road?
So I think the primary access will be from the internal road. Yes. Yeah, I don't think they plan on doing any driveways off of Salmon Run.
Okay.
We normally do not entertain twofers on public hearing, but I'll make an exception here.
As it moves forward, I was just on Salmon Run. So there's 5 lots, and I was wondering if there would be consideration for approaches when that's built out into the lots. Does that make sense?
I understand exactly what you're talking about. I think if there are 5 lots there with the extension to Craig can probably, yeah, please.
Sorry. Yes, so when, TD&H is the engineer working on the design of this, and so they'll be designing Salmon Run as to our city street standards, and you're asking about approaches, I think, onto your lots. So you could contact the design engineer and ask them if they could accommodate those driveways. I would think they would be, they would be doing that as part of their design, but you can talk with them about your request and then see if they can incorporate that into the design. You know, they're going to obviously keep access to those lots in the location where you have your driveways.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Nathan? Okay.
I spent a lot of time looking at these plots, and my main concern is parkland for my kids for future generations. But just to give you clarity to Lindsay's comments, is Lake Park Lane, Salmon Run, Patent are only 40-foot right-of-ways, which is 50 and 60. The city is the normal, and that is what's causing that push in our small neighborhood. So anyway, just a clarification because I've looked at the plans.
Great. Thank you so much. Any public comment online?
Nope.
Okay. Rebecca, question.
This is for Maria. Maria, when we walked that State Park Road with the tree committee, there at the very end of it where it turns a sharp 90-degree turn left, there was an open space there, and we talked about that becoming a park for kids. And I was just wondering, is that not going to be developed into a parkland?
It is open space, but it's not big enough to develop into a parkland, and there's no access to it. There's no place for people to be able to park and access it, which is pretty important for inviting people to an open space.
But is it city property?
It is city property. It was not a dedicated parkland. It's right of way.
But could we do something to improve it for the community, even if there isn't parking?
That would be something that would need to be contemplated at a park board level and funded for in the budgetary process. But there are, at this time, no designs for that.
Okay, so there's a homework for you guys in the neighborhood.
With that, I would please entertain a motion of some kind or character. Ben.
I would move to approve the request for a subdivision located at 270 Lake Park Lane.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilor Norton. And discussion.
I have nothing.
Nothing. Any questions or discussion for this matter? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. And Good luck. Thanks. Next, we have communications from our Public Works Director regarding everybody's favorite street, Carroll Avenue.
Yeah, so the Public Works staff has completed the bidding for the Carroll Avenue reconstruction project, which will reconstruct Carroll Avenue from West 2nd Street to West 7th Street. This collector street serves a vital role in the city's transportation network. So bids were received on March 21st, 2024, and opened at 9 a.m. in the council chambers conference room. We received 3 bids for the project, and you had the certified bid tabulation attached. The bids ranged from 17% lower to 20% lower than the engineer's estimate, which was $2,986,362. So there was less than a 4% discrepancy between the highest and lowest bids. No bid irregularities were found, and the low bidder for the project is Watson Excavating with a total bid of $2,396,350.30. The other bids were from Sandry Construction and LHC. So this project will be funded by the Resort Tax Fund, and you received the breakdown of the total project cost. So Watson Excavating is an extremely reputable firm who has successfully completed many projects for the city, and with less than 4% discrepancy between the high and low bids, staff is confident the bids were competitive. So it is the recommendation of the Public Works Department that council accept the bids as received and award the project to Watson Excavating for $2,396,350.30.
Any questions from council on the staff report? Rebecca? Well, I've got a question. And this is my rhetorical question I'll ask every time. Does this construction project include streetlights?
Yes, it does include your favorite thing, streetlights.
And I just...
That's where we're going.
Fine. This is a serious question. You guys give me a hard time about it. I have a hard time understanding why this city wants to spend taxpayer money on lights on streets that don't require it, and that the city, as a general proposition, prefers to have dark skies, and we're trying to preserve our carbon or reduce our carbon footprint. I'm just confused by the whole thing. And so I raised it every time, and I'm going to raise it every time. But I think it's something we need to start considering. I just think it's a false premise that we need to be spending this money and that we're doing something that makes no sense to be consistent with our reducing our carbon footprint. So there you go. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I would love to make a motion to approve the Public Works Department bid for Watson Excavating for the reconstruction of Carroll Avenue for $2,396,000 and change.
I second that.
Further discussion?
Yes, Frank, since just because this is funny, actually, in the report, it literally says streetlights, $41,400. So it's right there.
I understand that.
We're making them.
I understand. Just happy.
And there's a balance between safety and dark skies, and the city has erred on the side of safety, I think, more often than not, and that is why. And the reason we don't have ballards, I think Craig really explained that well when we were talking about doing ballards there, or whatever they're called, the short ones.
Yeah, they are called bollards. Yep. But yeah, for one, I walk home, like I'll be walking home tonight from work, walking home, and I really appreciate the streetlights so that I don't trip and fall on my face. But yeah, no, I think it's a safety issue. And, you know, we do want to encourage people to walk even, you know, in the evening. So it's helpful in the dark winter time.
That's what sidewalks are for. But anyway, with that said, all in favor? All opposed, like sign. Now it passes unanimously. And on we go. Next, we have our communications from our communications city manager. Dana?
You have my report in the packet. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and I have no additional items to report.
Questions from council? Good, all right. Next matter. Oh, go right ahead.
Dana, downtown, I talked to Bridger about this. Our bathrooms are being shut down like at 8 o'clock, I think, at the O'Shaughnessy, and then 8 to 10 at our own parking structure because of vandalism and messiness and all that stuff. But then I was remembering the judge's report and the amount of people that are using, I mean, we issue a lot of citations for things that should be happening in bathrooms. And so I'm thinking, I don't know how to say that differently, but peeing in public, you know. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could have, like, Maria's working on the south part of Riverside Park, and there's a really great design for an outhouse with a wraparound, and it's ADA compliant, and it's nice looking, I think. But I'm wondering if we could incorporate those downtown somehow, because it's really, I think it's very odd that we would have an active downtown and no public restrooms open beyond 10 p.m.
So people downtown from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. are at bars or restaurants. I mean, I think they aren't visiting retail, those are closed. So those facilities all have restrooms for their customers. The challenge with the late nights is it's darker. You know, you can't see people accessing there. Vandalism is occurring. And so it's pretty standard to see bathrooms closed fairly early from a public restroom standpoint. Closing at 8 p.m. really covers that dinner crowd that might be out looking and going to retail places. But all the establishments downtown do have restrooms. The cost to address the vandalism or to monitor those restrooms, if we were to keep them open later, would be a problem. And the urinating in public issue, you know, I think that those often probably happen later in the evening as individuals are more, I guess, in a mental state to be able to do that in public and have maybe intoxicated as part of that as well.
We have high visitation through the summers, and so I do think there's a need for us to address this rather than having people urinating in public. And so how do we plan for growth? I mean, like, if we had a million people visiting the valley during COVID and 3 million people visiting the park, and a lot of them come to Whitefish, and we don't have any public restrooms open downtown beyond 8 to 10 p.m.,
They become patrons of our bars. They get to go buy a drink and be a patron and use the bathroom. I mean, I think that's the thing is, you know, those are open really for Depot Park. Our park does close at 10 p.m., so there are potential that there's 2 hours that people are really just downtown for the park. But I find that to be a low probability. If the council desires us to look at that, we can, but I do not think an outhouse or a, you know, any type of that would work downtown like it does in a park.
All right, I'm going to keep bringing this up because I think we need more of them than we realize. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Rebecca. Next, we have consideration of approval for the development agreement with the Whitefish Housing and Alpenglow 2. Dana.
Thank you. So we had a work session back in March to discuss a request from Housing Whitefish for financial support for Alpenglow Phase 2 or Alpenglow 2. And council reviewed their request and directed staff to prepare a development agreement between the City of Whitefish and Housing Whitefish. And some of the key terms that we've made sure is included, the draft agreement, by the way, is in the packet, but some of the key terms of the project or of the agreement that we included based on council direction are detailed in my staff report. I'll briefly go over those, but number one is the sale of the project. There was concern, should Housing Whitefish sell that project later, that the affordability of those units would be potentially compromised. We did provide in the agreement that there's a minimum 30-year term for Housing Whitefish to hold that property, or the length that the Montana Coal Trust Multifamily Homes Program loan that they've applied for requires. Then at that point, the City of Whitefish would have the first right of refusal to purchase that project and property. We also addressed a drawdown process to ensure accountability and transparency, very similar to what we discussed at the work session with the Housing Authority, that they would provide invoices for us to provide a payment, acting much like a construction loan. Then we also addressed some concerns about just transparency of these funds, providing for an audit provision, or excuse me, an annual report provision, but also that city could audit their records should we need to. Then it addresses the actual contributions of $1 million that is spread out over 3 years. One of the concerns that was brought up at the work session was, what if they do not receive the loan that they've applied for through the Coal Trust, Montana Coal Trust Multifamily Home Loan Program. Within the agreement, we have included that if their application is not approved, disbursements of funds will only occur upon the city's approval of an alternative permanent financing plan. The reason we are pushing this through before that application process is done is because knowing that we have fully committed these funds helps the Housing Whitefish with that process. The term of agreement, we didn't really discuss that, but I did put 3 years. That was the original term of the snow lot agreement, so I felt that maybe it could be done in 3 years, and it's also within their planned timeline. So. The Exhibit A does provide a description of the project, targeted AMIs that were presented to council, as well as the project budget. Housing Whitefish Board did review and approved the language of the contract at its meeting on March 20th. The financial contribution for the city will be that $1 million, $200,000 from the Affordable Housing Fund, and $800,000 from the Resort Tax Fund over 2 years. That does leave some additional funding in fiscal year 2026 for resort tax, and so we would be able to utilize that for other programs and projects. About $330,000 is estimated at this point. So staff respectfully recommends City Council approve and authorize myself to execute the development agreement with Housing Whitefish for Alpenglow Phase 2.
Any questions from council on that? I would entertain a motion.
I so move.
Giuseppe moved.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Cornell. Any further discussions? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. The matter passes unanimously. What? I know it was easy. It's all your fault.
Sorry. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. I think there's some confidence here because you're involved, so thanks so much. Next on our, do we have consideration or communications from manager or for the mayor and city councilors? Do we want to have further discussion regarding our work session at this point? Or Dana, do you feel like you have what you need?
If you'd like to talk about that first or go through the agenda items, I know Kim is here for 10A about the land trust request, so maybe we could talk about the work session after.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that first. we're going to deal with the communication or consideration request from Northwest Montana Community Land Trust to release the deed restrictions at 508 Trailview.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Kim Morisaki, and I live in Kalispell. I'm the executive director for Northwest Montana Community Land Trust. And a few weeks ago, you agreed to release the deed restriction on 3 homes in Trailview, 307 Trailview Way, 303 Trailview Way, and also 611 Trailview Way. Thank you very much for doing that. As it turns out, another home has come up for sale and needs to be sold in May, and it is at 508 Trailview Way. And so I am back again to request that you lift your deed restriction on that home as well so that we are able to purchase it and add it to the land trust inventory. We have a gentleman who originally wanted to buy 307. He found out about 508 being available. It's larger. He has children, and so we were hoping to be able to work with him to buy 508. We still hope to add 307 as well, but it won't actually be ready to purchase until June or July. And so if you agree to lift the deed restriction on 508 as well, I'm asking that possibly could you also transfer the $30,000 you approved for 307 to 508 so that it can be purchased next month, and then I will have a little more time to go do some more fundraising for also purchasing 307.
Okay. Dana?
If you are okay with the plan, which staff supports, it's adding another Trailview home to the land trust inventory for Whitefish. That would be, if you do approve that and then transfer the $30,000 to this property instead of the former one, we will articulate that in the agreement that we're working to execute with Kim.
Sorry if I missed this. What is the $30,000?
That was when you'd approved $30,000 for 3 different Trailview homes to help buy down that cost. So you did that at a previous meeting. You gave us that direction and authorization from the Affordable Housing Fund. Yep.
The total amount is $90,000 per house, and $30,000 of each $90,000 pocket is coming from the city of Whitefish.
Question, do we need 2 motions or 1 motion?
One be fine.
Should be fine.
Any further questions? I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agreement as presented.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Connell. Any further discussions or questions? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Next, should we take the letters now, in your opinion? Okay. Pardon?
Just say only if we're going to respond to them.
Yeah. Any comments or thoughts on the letter from Michael Jamison? Rebecca?
I think it's a good idea to look at, but I think I would like staff to look at it more in depth and then get back with us. Dave, did you want to address that?
Well, I don't think his proposed suggestions are, onerous. They have to go through a floodplain permit anyway if it's in the floodplain. This is just our water quality protection regulations, but if you guys want to direct me to, I can bring forward a text amendment. Otherwise, it's going to languish probably for a while, so.
I was going to say too, so Wendy and I have both met with Michael and gone over this in detail. And we're, as you know, we were involved in the creation of the critical areas ordinance, and we're fine with the changes. They're pretty minimal.
And then I would like to propose that Dave and Wendy and Karen, whoever wants to work on it, keep going with this idea if everybody else is up for it.
Favor of it? In favor?
Just directing the staff to prepare the amendment, that
Yeah.
will have to go through public comment.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah, right. Next, we have a letter from Jan Metzbaker on deer management. Thoughts, comments? Comments from staff? Yeah.
I can be a brief comment. We will discuss this at the council goal setting session. It has been a council goal. We have worked on it, and we do kind of have the next step, which will be hiring a consultant. And so we will discuss that when it comes to the council goal setting session. That's the information we've received back from FWP. So
Great, thanks so much. All right, now I want to entertain a discussion of, from Dana, what do you need from us regarding
I
community?
think I have most of the sentiment. The one question that I have, when you look, if we go back into the report provided by RIS, is on the second page, that figure 2. You know, Jerry Dunker mentioned that the estimated AMI ranges, the way she has it laid out there, is going to be very difficult because you have such a small group that you're looking for each price of the house, and that you might not find somebody within such small price ranges. So my question, I think everything else I understand and gotten direction on, but my thought is to make it, because any time that when these come available, if they don't have a buyer, and it's because of our AMI restrictions, they're sitting there with a loan, carrying interest, trying to make payments on that. So we want them to be able to sell these, but I'm just came up with this idea randomly in this meeting. But say we tried to take a not such a detailed approach to the estimated AMIs, and we said, like, if it's priced 300 to 350, you know, people from 100 to 120% can apply. And what that means is it does reduce that that potentially you have somebody, and then you would say, okay, so it'd be AMI range 100% to 120 for prices 300 to 350, but the priority is provided to those with the lowest income qualifying. And then you take the next session, 375 to 425, and you say that's ranged 120 to 145, and then again, lowest income qualifying. And so it gives priority to the lowest income, but it doesn't stop them when all of a sudden the only qualified buyer they have is somebody who's at a higher AMI range. So that gives them some flexibility, but it also ensures for us that we are providing it to the lowest qualified buyers, and within those ranges. So do you guys understand? I know it's hard when I don't have anything written up, but thoughts on that?
I could comment on that. And this is related to the comments we received earlier about what kind of boundaries the council needs to put in this agreement. I mean, I think for me, first of all, I'm going to say that I'm glad that we have this MOU in place, because if we look what just happened, right? Like the project changed in a couple-year period, and because we have this MOU, it came back here to change the MOU, which forced changes in the project, which reduced the overall cost. That's a good thing. And I don't think our goal here is to micromanage what is happening in this project. I just think, from my perspective, if the project fundamentally changes, I think it should come back. But I also think we should provide the latitude for the housing authority. I have trust in their new management, hopefully, and that they will figure out the right way to put the right people in the right homes. And I know that's a complicated topic, because I know I've helped draft those policies in years past. And so I think it would be okay to me to have, like you said, some built-in flexibility for the housing authority to establish policies about who gets the homes in a way that's fair and equitable without having to come back here. But I do think that if we're going to commit $2 million of taxpayer dollars to this project, and at a now revised average unit price of $369,000 up to 145 AMI, if there is significant changes to those numbers, I would like to see that again. That's my opinion.
Any other thoughts from council at this particular point?
Yeah, I'm just really delighted that it's penciling. I mean, it's been a really long process, but just to remind people, we had a pandemic in the middle of it. We had a change in leadership at the Whitefish Housing Authority. There was a lot between when we started and where we end up. We got discovered during COVID. You know, all of our housing went sky high. So just that it's getting done, I'm really delighted. So whatever oversight you think we need, I think it's time to get the ground broken, though.
The one thing I'd like to see, or I think it'd be appropriate, it's consistent with what Ben was talking about. I still believe that this project becomes a success for this community when we begin to house the community, the people that need this housing. Yeah, there are people at 180 or 190 that can't find housing in Whitefish. I get that. But this project was never about them. And it's always been the case that people in that, it's life. I get that. But I really think we need to, whatever matrix we put in there, I think the thought needs to be that the balance of this thing, however we market it, and one of the things that came to my mind was, okay, we're going to put these on the market at 4 at a time, whatever they are. And, you know, if we sell one at 190 or 110 or whatever the number that we all agree on is, then maybe one or two of the others has to be allocated to, or and maybe the price point is what gets us there. And so if they're bringing on 4 units, they can't all be the 450 units. They've got to be units that are of the full range, and so we get the full panoply. But I hate to see us in a position where we're ended up marketing these things or making them available primarily to people in the higher ends, particularly those in the well over 100% of the AMI. And that's the kind of concern that I've got with where they're going. I think their heart's in the right place. I get the idea that we need to get some of these things sold and sold quickly so we can begin to fund and refund some of the continuation of the build out. But whatever we do, that needs to be a consideration. And when you bring it back to us, explain to me how that works. And I'm going to be okay with it. But that's my only 2 cents on the thing.
And RIS did confirm that they did not do the pro forma assuming the highest ones are sold first. So that's good, because if they did, then you'd have added costs. But so I don't think that's a problem. We can articulate that in the plan.
I just have one question. Is there some room for coming up with some average that we're trying, some average target number that we're trying to get in terms of AMI? Is there, I mean,
169,000 a unit.
Okay, so whatever AMI that equates to is fine. Okay, it just feels like the message needs to kind of be that within a certain period of time that these are going to be designed for the people that are making right on the average AMI, with the 100% of AMI for our area. And I want to be able to be able to explain that message to people, that it maybe not happen right away, but that is what's going to happen over the course of time as we sell some units. Those units get resold and we're able to capture some of that savings, those kind of things. It just feels like we need to have some sort of bottom to the whole thing, like, or a goal for what is the affordability goal here? Is it 100%? Is it 90%? Or is our goal only 120%? I just think without that, I feel a little bit out at sea.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, please.
If you look at the table, and as Ben commented, the average unit price is, let's say, $370. It's $369, $300. There is a price range at $375, which is close to it, that is indicated at $120 to $133. So if those numbers match, right now, the message is that of the whole development, the average unit price matches a range of AMI between 120 and 133. Those are the numbers right now.
Andy?
I have not had a chance to comment here, so I'm going to comment right now. And
I'd have given you a chance.
what's that?
I'd have given you a chance.
You have not. No. We want to say that, okay, we want to hit this average AMI, we want to do this, we want to do that, but what we should understand after the last 4 years, and what we should understand from looking at all of these numbers, is there's an economic reality that regardless of what we want to make ourselves feel good with, or the public feel good with, by saying this is the range we're going to hit, without additional funding beyond what we're already putting into the project, we can't do that. We simply can't do it. And I think Giuseppe's point is really well made. It's like, okay, we're going to average out at $375,000. That's half the cost of the cheapest home in Whitefish today. That's getting something done. We're not going to solve the entire problem with this one single project. We're going to hit maybe only one specific group of people in that 100 to 125 or 90 to 125. But those people need houses too. And yeah, maybe we're not going to hit people down in the 80% without a lot of additional either private funding or public funding. Well, we know public funding is not coming out of the city because we've given all we can. So I think that's the message we need to send to people, not that we're going to take care of everybody, we're going to take care of the lowest end, we're going to do everything we can to get the most qualified, lowest income person into that housing. That's what we're trying to do here. But it's still going to cost us X number of dollars to buy a 2x4, regardless of what we want to hit for a target of AMI. That's the reality. And I think we've just got to all be comfortable with that at some point. I mean, it's, we're looking at something over in granted it's not equity housing, but we're looking at the other project over in Alpen Glow 2. Well, that's going to be, some of those units will be all the way down to 60%. Well, then we hit part of that need. That's what, I think we get caught up in this all the time. We've got to solve every housing issue in the community with every single project we do. And there isn't the silver bullet. We all know that, but we want there to be, but it's just not there. So we pick away at it. We do 20 units here, we do 30 units over there. We get a little bit, we get 40 units from McRue's for dedicated housing. That's how we win the battle over time. It's a battle of attrition for us. That's all we can do. So I get a little frustrated when we try and beat a project to death trying to think we're going to fix everyone's problem in the community, and we just aren't going to do it. So that's my soapbox. So thank you.
And I like that one better than mine even. No, I think that's right, and I concur with Andy's comments. Mine were not out of line, but my understand, what I want us to do is let's serve the needs that we can serve here and make sure that the community understands that, I guess the better way to look at it, these are ownership units. Maybe those are really better suited for people in 100 to 20, 150. I don't know what that answer is, but I think these projects we need to demonstrate to the folks that we're delivering a project that is literally half the cost of anything else in Whitefish. And I think that's maybe the better message, and I could feel better about that. Anyway,
I mean, we're not a for-profit developer here.
No,
We're giving them away at what it costs us to build them.
Yeah.
That's the reality, right? I mean, we're not making money here.
Ben?
Just a quick comment. We had this exact same problem when we drafted the Legacy Homes program a long time ago. And we quickly concluded that when it comes, you produce the unit at a certain price and a certain AMI on average, but the person that buys that home could be anything. It could be, if it's a 100 AMI home, the person that buys it might be 105, they might be 95. It's complicated. Is it a lottery? Is it first come, first serve? But I think the key thing is we should make sure that the Housing Authority has procedures to identify how that gets done and that they're followed. Because it should not be, well, the executive director thinks that this person's great and we want to put them in there. That's bad. So there needs to be a written procedure that identifies who is the person that is eligible to purchase this home, and we can review review it or not, but I think having flexibility built in that system is really important because like everything, it is more complicated than you think. And people's financial situations are complicated. And at the end of the day, you have a valuable community asset, and to be the most utilized, you want somebody who is the most in need to use that asset. And I think we just need to make sure that the housing authority has procedures to establish the fact that the person that is buying the home is the one that needs it, or something equivalent. So.
You have a good idea. We can revisit.
We'll figure it out. Yep,
Yeah.
I got it.
When you bring it back, we'll figure it out again.
Riss and I will get it done.
Okay, no,
Yep.
but I think you've got.
Thank you.
I think you understand what the preferences are.
Yes.
And how you address those or where the real concerns are. Okay,
Yes.
good.
Thank you.
Anything else from staff this evening? Councilor comments. Giuseppe, you want to start? Good. Steve? Ben? Andy?
Want to wish my Aunt Iris a happy 96th birthday today, so.
And you should. That's great. Thanks so much. I have nothing further this evening, and we'll see all next time. Thanks. We're adjourned.